Blake, what percentage of your marital success do you owe to me?
Toby, what's like the lowest number possible?
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who doesn't know how to quantify how low Toby's advice can rank for me. And I'm here with my co-host who just started his side hustle of doing marriage counseling, Toby Walters.
What is the lowest number? Is it 0 or do you get into negatives?
That's what my joke was the negatives because there is no lowest number.
So my marital advice for you has been nothing but actually counterproductive, so it'd be negative.
Well, okay, if we're going to talk for reals, you'll have to come up to me in person and ask for Toby's best marital advice. I can't say it on the podcast, and I can't say it's
on
been
this podcast.
For my relationship, meh. For other things, very, very helpful.
Was it the, and we can bleep out this very statement, was it the trick?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're going to bleep. Look at Eric's face. We should restart this whole thing. All right.
Okay, so for our listeners...
that are all gone now.
Yeah. If you don't know, I first met Blake through, my wife and I hosted a young married small group. And what were there, about 5 couples in that group that joined? And so you came, and I feel like the first week you had on your Grinch, or you had some ridiculous
it wouldn't have
pajama
been the first
set
week.
on.
I probably wore pajamas. I mean, I'm wearing pajamas right now.
Yeah, basically. And as most of 99% of our audience would not be surprised, I couldn't stand you at first. You're a lot to take in the beginning.
Do you remember how long it took before you were like, did you go from not standing to okay with, or did you go from not liking to then liking?
I mean, it was the first time you see a mass pileup on the interstate, you're like, oh, that's tragic. That is awful. And then it just starts to get interesting. You're like, how many cars are death and destruction? Let's count it up there. But Blake, literally tonight, and of course, this is coming out later, but my wife and I are launching a brand new young marrieds group. And this will be our very first meeting tonight through Church of the City.
You just had one though recently. Did it just go a year or something?
No, we have not had one since you guys
Judas
launched.
Cheating on us.
I know. So with Church of the City, I mean, it's a massive church like other mega churches out there. And they're still pretty young, like a 10-year-old church. And so the marriage ministry isn't super developed. And we asked one of the small group pastors, hey, would you be open to having us start a young marrieds group? And they're sure. Once they knew that Shelly was a great human being and that she can come over, cover over a lot of my faults, then it was safe enough for them. So we announced this on, there was just a group for people that had signed up for interest in small groups. And so we announced last Saturday, hey, we're starting up this group. And the first person signed up in 43 seconds. I timed it. I didn't even send out the email, went back, and it was bloop. And then the next person signed up within 2 minutes, bloop. And we had 6 couples sign up that day, and we now have 9 couples coming to this group at our house tonight.
That's a lot of people.
I know. So, I'm wondering, again, once we stop airing and you can tell me the actual advice, because I need good stuff to help these young couples in their new marriages.
I can't speak of it, Toby. It's too heinous. Speaking of things that are too heinous to even introduce, the amazing, all-knowing, here to give us more marriage advice, Eric Mooney. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks, fellas. I've been married for a week, so I feel like I'm super qualified to give marriage advice. So for everyone listening, I've got all the answers.
And speaking of your qualifications, we made it 130-something episodes. Getting everyone's actual title down before we started, we didn't here. So if we were going to introduce you, you were going to publish a business card. What would your title be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm the audio director of Dream City Church here in Phoenix, Arizona. It's nice and sunny here. I don't know if it's nice in Nashville, but it is 95 degrees today, and it's October 24th.
Yeah.
So Phoenix, where summer never ends.
I think it's going to be 78 here today and sunny. So I'll take Nashville weather today.
Are you swimming in December?
Literally, yeah. So all these guys have pools. People stay out of their pools in the summer, but then they get in during winter. It's reverse summer.
Are there
it's
any
awesome.
months that you can't swim because it's cold?
It will get kind of cold in February. Like you'll have the off day. I remember like my buddy was outside skateboarding whenever I had roommates back when I first moved here. And I'm like, it's freezing outside. It's 55 degrees. He's like, we never get this. So he's outside like trying to skate, you know? And the first time I actually came to Phoenix was in 2011. And that's back when I pretended to skate. Emphasis on pretend because I was not very good. It was August and it was, I think I was like 17 years old. We went outside at my friend's house and we're like, hey, let's go skate. It's 3 p.m. on August 14th. And we take our shirts off and they have like blacktop out in front of the house. And we start skating. I hit a rock and I fell onto my back on this black, like concrete asphalt thing. And I burned my back. It was crazy, man. So
Did you
that's
get
just
like a second-degree burn or something there?
Dude, I kid you not. It looked like I had a sunburn on my back. It didn't go away for like 4 or 5 days. I couldn't sleep on my back.
If he was skateboarding alone and he fell unconscious, would he have just completely cooked? Like would Eric have turned into a turkey
On
dinner?
one side, yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right.
I would have just evaporated.
And if that was the case, that would have been a good 5 truths and a lie. But let's see what else you got cooked up for us here. So this is our weekly game where we try to introduce our guests and me and Toby compete. It's decently neck and neck right now, Toby.
I thought I was losing horribly.
A race too close to call,
Okay.
as one might say.
Okay. And perfect for the election season right now.
Which this might be out next week or in December.
Yeah.
Number 1, I have been a part of giving someone a swirly.
Blake, have you ever gotten a swirly?
I think that there's a lot of bullying stuff in movies that doesn't happen in real life.
Okay.
Number 2, I have mixed audio for a president. Yeah, we'll get in line. So has everybody else.
And president of what? You know, the Glee Club?
Oh, that would be
He didn't specify there.
Number 3, I've been kicked out of every local burger restaurant in my hometown.
That sounds awesome.
Number 4, my wife is a literal Disney princess. By whose definition?
Yeah,
Eric?
how literal. Come on.
Number 5, I still hold various micro records in sport compact drag racing. Okay, I didn't know he'd
That's
be
too
one.
confusing to be a lie.
I didn't think he'd be one to do drag. Number 6, I have
Oh.
social anxiety. HAH.
I think he was saying ha or
He doesn't even know how to laugh right from all that anxiety.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know how to laugh, but I could be faking it. You never know.
Okay.
Okay.
Toby, do you have one that you feel really?
I don't.
There's 2, and so I was kind of going to split the difference.
All right. I'll let you pick first.
I just don't think he's been kicked out of every local. Yeah, it's either that or the swirly. I'm going to say he's not been kicked out of every local burger restaurant in his hometown, unless there's only one, and then he got kicked out of there.
Great. I'm going to grab the swirly. So,
All right, Eric, we're believing in you because those 2 are heinous. We believe you only did at least one. We locked
Yeah.
in.
All right. So you guys are going with those?
Yep.
All right. So the lie is number 4. My wife is not a literal employed Disney princess. She did. This is real tricky though. She did, however, work for a party company as like cosplaying as princesses, but it wasn't all Disney stuff. So I really got you guys there. I actually have been kicked out of every Brahms in my hometown in Springfield, Missouri. And I have been a part of giving someone a swirly.
Why did you get kicked out of a burger joint, Eric? I thought you were a Christian.
You know, we really blurred the lines there for a while. So
Was it a fight or?
no. So me and my buddies we were punks, man. Like in high school, oh, dude, we got in so much trouble all the time. And like, I'm from Springfield, Missouri. Springfield, Missouri is not a super exciting town. Like, there's really not very much out there. Like, there's a couple colleges. But we just tried to figure out like games to play and things to do when we're like 16, 17, 18 years old. Like we just got our cars because like, you know, that's how you get around. You can't just walk everywhere. Small Midwestern town, right? So there's this local chain called Brahms and it's like any old school like burger restaurant. They'll like have this like boom mic that you'll talk into to announce your order. Well, we came up with this game where you have to walk up to the counter, take the stand, like the gooseneck mic stand, grab it, and start counting into it, like over the intercom. And you'll go 1, 2, 3. And the idea was like whoever could count longest without them physically taking the mic from you got the highest score. So this is a game we came up with. And and it wasn't like don't stop until they tell you to stop. Like they have to physically grab it out of your hands and take it. Like you have to have like, the balls to do it. So I held the highest score at 21 seconds before they grabbed the mic out of my hand. And they literally took our photos, and we would go into every bra. And so we were not allowed in any single Brahms. They literally had like our photos up on this like tack board. So we couldn't come in. So
wow, that is so intense, man.
This sounds a lot like the podcast. Like you and I have our mics, and then we do ridiculously nefarious things as we speak into them, and just waiting for somebody to grab them away from us, Blake.
I've been waiting this whole time, honestly. Yep. Why did you give someone a swirly, and why was it Toby?
That would be, I don't know if I'd be able to give Toby a swirly. He's just too nice of a guy. Look at his face.
Oh,
Eric.
Blake, I feel like you deserve a swirly. I feel like you need one.
100%.
Okay.
I grew up in the like music scene in Springfield. We had a really good, like back when Christian metalcore was a thing, went to a lot of metalcore shows, like local ones. Was in a metalcore band, and we had this like opening show at one of it was like an opening act for like a headliner. It was just a small show, think like 200-300 people in the small room. There was this one single bathroom, like men and women's. Well, the opening act, the front man was kind of a scumbag. He was like maybe 16 years old. And he had just broken up with his girlfriend at the show, like before the show started. And so his girlfriend's like in the audience crying. And all the other bands like hate this guy, right? Because he's like already hitting on other girls. Granted, we're all like 16, right? It's like not that serious. But of course, to us, it's the end of the world. So a couple of the guys there, they like walk up, they're like, this dude deserves a swirly. And like, we're like, oh yeah, like that's funny. But like, they're being like dead serious. Like, let's give him a swirly. So like they go on, they do the opening act, and it's between sets when they're like changing stage over. My friend, another guy, and then I was kind of a part of it. We grabbed this dude, right? The front man, and we like start pushing him towards the bathroom, and it's like, oh yeah, this is funny. But then this huge guy, like big burly, think like linebacker, grabs him and picks him up on his shoulder like this. And then all of a sudden, like we start walking towards the bathroom, and like, dude, this guy had just gotten out of the bathroom and taken like a really nasty, it's like it smells. It's a single bathroom. Like you open the door, it's just like a sink and a toilet.
Sounds like the church gear bathrooms.
One bathroom, like a nasty venue bathroom. And he starts carrying him towards the bathroom. And the front man, like they're all like laughing, but all of a sudden he starts realizing, oh, this is serious. And he starts like throwing actual punches, like punching us in the face, punching us everywhere he can to get away. And then the entire room, like 200 people, start like chanting, swirly, swirly, swirly.
This is straight out of the 80s.
I'm telling you, dude, this happened. This is not fake. This is like 2009. And we like slowly take him, and like they like dunk his body. Like it like think like planking. Like they have him like in a plank position. They dunk his head into the toilet, and then someone flushes. And he had this like long hair. And his hair was totally drenched. He like had to like push his hair back, and like it's just nasty toilet water. Some dude had just taken a gross So it was the best moment of my life.
Says the guy who just got married.
My wife won't watch this. It's okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of neither does mine. Speaking of the second best moment of your life, tell us about mixing audio for a president.
Oh man, that was cool. So we at Dream City, we're an event venue. It's like 4,300 seats. So a lot of times we'll just rent out the space. We do some events with Turning Point USA, and Trump needed a place to host his campaign rally a couple months ago. And I'm the house, AV guy. So they asked me to run audio. It was cool. So Secret Service came in, swept the building. They had literal bomb squads, but the Secret Service member came in, and it's exactly what you would think. Like these guys are in suits. Walks up to me. I'm like at front of house. It's like 2 days before the event. They're there. They have like canine dogs and stuff. It's unreal. This is before the assassination attempt even. he walks up to me, he starts asking me questions. He's like looking at my console, looking at like all the racks at front of house. And he's like, how secure is your network? And I'm like, no, it's pretty secure. He's like, is there any possible way a hacker could get in from the outside and, shut things off or change things? And I'm like, no, it's a closed loop. And he's like, have you ever had ill feelings about Donald J. Trump in the past? And I'm like, no, like, I think he's a good guy. He's just a presidential candidate. I'm trying to be like neutral. I'm not a huge political person. I won't really get into that side of things, but it was an interesting experience just having a Secret Service member like interview me, like, am I going to do something to sabotage the president? So we have the event. They kick us out of the building. We're allowed to get in at 5 a.m. to like do our final checks, but they kick us out at like 6 a.m. and we're not allowed back in until 9. And we all have to like go through metal detector. There's like 4,000 people like crowded up against the building, and we have to like get to the front of the line. The only people that was let in was us, like the tech crew, and the Secret Service members. So it was just like all these people are angry at us. Like, why are they getting to the front of the line? It was nuts. And then we go to our positions and we're not allowed to leave our positions. Like, I can't go to the bathroom because it's a security issue for me to leave. So
all
all
day
day
we're going
we're
to
just
give Trump a swirly.
I know.
I was looking for that joke too. Dang it.
Dude, his hair would look awesome being flushed in a toilet too. So it just, hopefully this doesn't come across.
This should
as a
be
bad
like the
thing.
new presidential thing. No, like we give both a swirly, and that's their photo on election night to help us all get through it. How funny that would be.
It's part of the inauguration, and you gotta get a swirly.
I'm like shocked at the level of security. I get it, but like when the tech guys have to just stay at the booth, I'm like, what if you had to take a dump? Like,
You wear a diaper or have a bucket.
You gotta get a bucket, dude.
Yeah.
oh my
That's
gosh.
not awkward at all.
Well, speaking of something that's been a total show, tell us about your background. Eric, you're not just biceps and a beautiful mustache. Talk to us about your current ministry role and how you work with church gear even after this.
Blake, you're my best friend now. You're glazing me right now. Yeah, dude. I come from a ministry background. My parents are. I've always been in ministry. My dad's super involved with the Assemblies of God on a national level. So we just kind of grew up around big church. My dad did national youth. So I was the snot-nosed kid, running around at National Youth Convention with 12,000 students in an arena, like meeting all the bands backstage. I got the all access pass when I'm 12 years old. So I kind of had the context of like big mega church kind of growing up. Grew up at James River Church out in Ozark, Missouri, which is a pretty sizable church. And you guys actually had someone on the pod, Britton Miles. Britton Miles is my worship leader. He's currently over at the Belonging Co-op with you guys in Nashville. And Britton is an incredible singer-songwriter, just a good dude. And he's currently doing audio and production, which is a cool inspiration for me. But Britton was our worship pastor, like when I was in middle school. And I remember seeing him on stage. He's got the guitar. He's seeing him like, man, that guy looks cool. I want to learn how to play so I can lead worship. And so I learned how to play like electric guitar in like 6th, 7th grade, just so I could be on stage and like look cool. Cause that's like the motivation. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, it's not because you want to worship.
That's why we have a podcast.
What was that?
That's why we have a podcast, so we can look cool.
So we can look cool. That's the idea, right? And so I learned how to play, just kind of grew up playing worship at James River and had various opportunities and kind of was just around like a really good like production value from a kind of early age. So had that background, and then from there went to school, was really like a big car guy, which was kind of bad for me. All my money went to it. Started working at a Honda dealership when I'm like 20 years old, and I dropped out of college. And God really was like, no, you're called to ministry. And so after a couple years of doing that, I quit and then went back to school in Northern Illinois, an extension site that my sister, Elise Wood, had started with SAGU, which was cool. So I finished out my 4-year degree. I have a 4-year degree in church leadership. Thought I was called to be a youth pastor, which was so interesting, right? Because I don't feel like I'm a very good youth pastor at all. So I got a job in Schaumburg, Illinois, as a youth pastor and worship pastor combo because I was not ready to give up worship.
Toby
Been
knows
there.
about that.
Yep.
Yeah. Toby does know about that.
Yeah.
It's a calling, man. Let me tell you.
Yeah. And so, you're. Sorry, brain fart.
Toby
guys.
just had a stroke. I'm going to need the EMTs in here right now. If he dies, I can't work anywhere else.
Are you going to cut this out, or are you just going to leave it in to
think I'm
roast
gonna
me for
leave
being
it.
old and brain
We
fart?
have 3 bleeps already, and we're at the 19-minute mark, but I'm leaving that in.
And what's scary is this is our first of 3 podcasts today.
Oh,
So
it's
Eric, I hope you warm up and I can, or warm me up and I can like come alive later.
Yeah,
But
send some of that Arizona heat our way.
okay, so
If you guys just have to get closer and hug, you have to rub each other. To
Toby
wow.
and I have never hugged, and I'm on document as like a very big hugger. So
I know. Yeah, you've hugged every man at Church Gear except me, I think.
I think Toby and I know that whenever one of us hugs the other for the first time, that's the moment we're actually going to kill the other that
Yeah.
night. It's like the mob or something.
This is the end.
Or it could just be so much pent up tension that there's finally the release of the hug, and
We just cry.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so youth and worship pastor to audio engineer at a 4,000 seat auditorium. Is that an overnight
change.
journey?
Yes, it happened overnight.
Yeah. Well done.
No. So what happened was I was a worship pastor at this church in Illinois, and I got there, and they were kind of undergoing that change from old school to more contemporary. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
They had think Pentecostal. They got the flags.
Oh,
everything like that.
Were people running up and down the aisles too?
No, they weren't that expressive, but I
Okay.
think they wanted to be.
Yeah.
I just don't think anyone was brave enough. This church, I don't know if you guys remember, churches had this thing in the 90s, and maybe the 80s too, where it was like, hey, we're going to start you off. We got a phased building plan. We're going to start you off in the auditorium. That's like technically a gym, right? And then once you guys have enough people, then we'll graduate you to the second phase of the building where we'll build you an auditorium. It was like church builders had that thing, right? But so many churches never made it out of the gym. So then they just transformed their gym into their main auditorium. Well, that was what was happening at this church in Illinois when I got there. And they had no integrator. They had no real plan. And they had like a $7,000 budget for tech. They had no tech guy. It was just me, the youth pastor, and the worship pastor who was 23 years old trying to figure out his life. And basically the pastor gave me a job. He's like, you need to come up with a plan to get all this working with a brand new stage. And they literally think this, like they tore down the drywall to like the studs. We were still having church in the center of this giant construction zone. So they put up this like 30-foot like clear plastic tarps, and then we put a portable stage in the center of a construction zone, and we were having church like every single week, PA on sticks. And so I had no idea what I was doing. So I'm just like Googling how to plug in XLR cable to console, like things like that. Like I just had no clue what I'm doing. And like I figured it out, and so
and this is great, Eric, because kind of the theme of this episode is growing up fast, like being thrust into something that you have no experience with, and how do you figure it out? And so, talk to us a little bit more about this experience. It sounds like, did you have any knowledge of system integration in this moment as you were suddenly asked to be a system integrator?
Yeah, I had absolutely none, man. And like, I all I knew was how to talk to people, right? Which is so funny because I actually do have social anxiety. That's not one of my lies, but I do know how to talk to people. And my pastor was just like, I need you to figure this out. So coming from James River, I knew, hey, there's a guy, Brian Rago. He was there on staff for a long time. I think he works for Paragon 360 now. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. I haven't talked to him in a while. I called Brian because Brian was like the production guy under Stephen Maddox for like a long time at James River. And I called Brian. I'm like, I have X amount of dollars and I need to accomplish putting a stage together. What would you do with this money? Please, for the love of God, tell me what to do because I'm freaking out. And so Brian, all the way back in Missouri, just walked me through it on the phone. Like, I would do this, and this and this, buy this piece of gear, sell this piece of gear, and he does it totally free. Like he wasn't out to make money. He was just trying to help, And so what I did as a guy who knew nothing about what I was doing was I reached out to people that did know, right?
Yeah.
That was the key for me. If I don't know, I talk to someone who does. And the moment that if I let my pride get in the way and say, no, I'm going to do this all on my own, and I'm just going to research, not talk to anyone and trust anyone, it probably would have been a complete crap show, right? But I talked to a professional, and he steered me in the right direction. It was a lot of work, and we did end up getting an integrator to help tune the PA and like point it. And it ended up being a pretty good experience. I think they still have that PA today after all these years. So
as a kid with social anxiety, you had to step out of your comfort zone to ask for help. I think a lot of our listeners would default to, I'm just going to search this up on Google, see what I get, and then see what happens. And, the results of that will be measured based on the skill set of the individual trying it.
Sounds like me on a Monday. How to market a company. I've read all of Google at this point.
Yeah, I usually see our marketing on Thursday. I'm like, well, that's getting better, Blake.
So, Eric, it sounds like some of your learnings from this were like, okay, ask for help, do some deep dives, get over your current fears. Any other things that you kind of took away from that? On like, because I mean, that's a pretty high bar. Like, I'm imagining myself in your shoes. If you really knew nothing and then you had to do all that, that's just the same as me. That's terrifying to me. To anyone else in that position right now, any advice or other takeaways you took from that moment?
Yeah, granted, I did have a little bit of a leg up only because I had been around big church, but there's a lot of guys at churches out there that have never been a part of a church that's like larger than 200 people. And so maybe they never had the budget to do high production value things. So maybe they don't have the leg up. But my recommendation to those guys like that would be to make connections with people. Like we have Facebook, like we have Instagram, we have all these awesome things now. Like, don't put yourself in a bubble, right? Like, you got to be willing to like talk to people. And that's hard as a tech guy, because a lot of us in this position wear the black shirts. We stand behind a booth and a console and a screen and like, hey, don't talk to me, right? But so it's like the total opposite. So whenever we have things like MXU come through town, like make it a point to talk to your pastor, like, I need to go to this, because while it may not right now seem like it's bringing much value to the table, I could make a connection with someone that's going to teach me so many things that could affect the church for years to come, and then they'll see a monetary gain from that in the long run, like the return on the investment.
And one of my, number one piece of advice in this regard, and I say it all the time, is like, if you're listening and you're at a 200 person church, you're at a 1,000 person church, I can almost guarantee you there's a bigger church in town with a very knowledgeable production team filled with people just like you who like to wear shirts, black shirts, and be behind the scenes. And they're generally very willing to give their help and their advice and their wisdom. And so to just Google churches in your area, go on their website, find their production people, and reach out. It's really that simple to ask for help.
It seems to be the most common repeating piece of advice on this podcast. Also, you said one of my favorite things, Eric. You said the black shirts. I'm pitching this again live on the pod. I think that would be a great term for the church gear listeners, is the black shirts. Now, the only reason not to is apparently it was also a term in one of the world wars for a fascist regime, but that was a long time ago. That was a long time ago.
Blake, you are basically a fascist regime, so it does fit.
It's cool. Statute of limitations have passed. I think
so.
People don't think about that anymore. I think we could call ourselves the black shirts. That's what we wear.
We're the black shirts.
Do you understand my closet since starting to work here? I have the most of any color now. I'm a very colorful person. It's all black shirts now. I have a pair of black pants getting shipped this way that I paid a lot of money for. Like, y'all haven't. I get it now. It's very slimming.
Okay, well, for our 17 million listeners on this episode, we're pitching the black shirts. Start sharing the black shirts as Church Gear's new audience moniker, and let's see if it catches fire.
Let's see if the shirt fits.
Yep. So
you heard it from the mouth of the colorful man Blake himself.
That's right.
Black shirts.
Isn't black the inclusion though of all the colors?
Yeah, it's like the melting
and
pot
white's
of
the
every
absence
single
of color. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
the
great.
black shirts. All right.
So, Eric, kind of continuing on your journey, but also this theme of growing up quickly. When was kind of your first moment when you realized, oh, oh crap, like I have to lead people. How do I do that? And how was that experience for you?
Along with the social anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm good at managing it. So it's a lot of people have no idea. They think, oh, you're not going person. I'm like, no, I'm not. The first time that really hit me was at that church in Illinois as the worship pastor. Real quick story. Flew in for the interview. They wanted me to lead worship for the weekend and then also preach Sunday night for youth because they had youth on Sunday nights. But they always did their worship practice on Saturdays. So like they flew me in on a Friday. Saturday morning, they have the full worship band practice for the weekend. But before the worship practice, they would have like a full prayer. Think like a prayer meeting. So any of the church attendees would come and they would just pray to music for like an hour on Saturday mornings. That was kind of a thing the church was doing. But word had gotten out that I was interviewing for this church, and so instead of there being like an average of like 15 people at this prayer meeting, there was like 60. And so all these people are here to pray, and I'm like, cool. But instead of leaving after prayer ended, they all stayed to listen to me sing, which was awesome. So I'm just getting judged. Like I'm with a band I've never talked to, never like had any experience with. And I'm just like this 22-year-old kid, like, hey guys, I'm your new worship pastor potentially. Like, let's sing some songs. And so we get through worship rehearsal, and then the lead pastor's like, all right, everybody, if you want, we can all just circle up, grab a chair, and you can just ask Eric some questions.
Oh my goodness.
And so it's like a circle with 60 people like sitting around,
Wow.
and they're all there to talk to me. And I'm just like, this is my nightmare. This is my nightmare. This is my nightmare. And
This is how we interview at Church Gear, by the way, just in case you were ever wondering.
And churches do this. Will Brown, when he went to the new location, he said everyone just kind of came in the room and gave all their grievances to him. And he was like, guys, this is the interview. I haven't even got here yet.
Yeah, dude, trust me. I was questioning my whole life decisions by this point. You guys ready? The first question I got, it was from a board member.
Do you believe in Jesus?
No, way worse. Are you willing to take vocal lessons?
Oh, brutal.
Yeah.
Wow.
Bro, immediately I'm just like, all right, see you guys later. It's how I'm feeling inside. But I'm just like, yeah, I'm always open to getting better and learning, like, so.
Wow.
He did not like how I was singing. And granted, I'm not like the most amazing singer, but I'm like passable to get through church.
It's like the first time I interviewed Blake, my first question was, are you willing to get plastic surgery on your face?
And it went horribly. I mean, I look terrible, but Toby's got a buddy.
Yeah.
So yeah, we started with that question. The next question was from the acoustic guitar player, and this was a gentleman. He was foreign, and he'd moved to the United States from Africa. And maybe he just didn't have the best social cues, but I remember the first thing he said, it was the second question. He's like, the last worship pastor told us that we would have say in the picking the songs, but he lied to us and never let us do that. Are you going to lie to us like him?
Wow. This is a fun interview. I like this.
Dude, it was brutal. And like, so I'm just like, all of my leadership hats are coming on, and it's just stuff I've gleaned from like my youth pastor, Scotty Gibbons at James River, my dad, Jay Mooney, who is an incredible leader. I'm blessed to have him as my dad. All that stuff just comes on, and I just like transform into this like mashup of leadership that I've just seen over my life. And I'm just like, I will never lie to you guys. I will say straight up that it's not going to be up to you to pick the songs. However, you are going to be valued as a part of the team,
Was it like the Karate Kid moment where the Mr. Miyagi training like suddenly took form, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, wax on, wax off is like a defensive move.
Literally. So it's like immediately I'm like, okay, I'm leading people. This is the first time I've ever done it. And it's like, you have to do it. You can't just pretend anymore. Like you have to actually do it. And outside of just the jargon of like, I know what to say, like you have to believe in what you're doing. So I poured my heart and soul into that team. I took the job. It was a really weird worship culture when I got there. There was just a lot of animosity between people. I worked really hard. I managed to get budget to like have food every single week. We had a team night where we would sit down, we would do a Bible study together. We would have dinner and we would just hang out and become friends. And like that did wonders for that church. And everyone was more bought in and they wanted to hang out and they felt like they were a part of something. And I'd never done that before. Like I have a level of social anxiety, you know, but like I'm there leading people and that's where it comes from, right? It's not about saying the right things and knowing the right strategies. It's about building relationships with people, because if you don't have a relationship with someone, it doesn't matter how good things are, they're not going to be bought in. And I've got a good story about that when we get to it. But
Okay.
Please.
So I was just thinking, for some of our listeners, you know, you get it. You're a black shirt. You have social anxiety. Like a lot of our people listening, like, yeah, I went into church production so I don't have to lead people. And then, like that's actually a huge part of the job and something that you're not prepared for. You got all these technical skills. And so for our listeners, do you have any just, you know, quick advice on like, well, you're going to have to lead and here's a couple steps to get started?
Yep. You're definitely going to have to lead. The big thing is knowing how to have an actual relationship with someone. Like not just, hey, here's how to work a piece of gear. What would it be like for you to take someone out to coffee as a tech guy? Would you freak out, you know, or would that be something you'd be open to doing? My biggest piece of advice to someone would be to get outside your comfort zone. If you're afraid to talk to someone, right? Like you need to get outside your comfort zone. That'd be my biggest piece of advice, is not being behind the booth, right? Between services, step out into the lobby, talk to someone, meet someone new, and be the face of the production department. Even if you're not technically the overarching leader, you need to be the person that's the face of like, hey, we're actual people. We love you. We're a part of the church. We're pastors in our position. That's the biggest thing I would say.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking that earns us a lot of goodwill in ministry. It's not a joke. Like the production guys blamed when something goes wrong and only notice when something goes wrong. But if, you know, sweet old Glenda knows Tim, the production guy, and loves Tim, the production guy, you know, when something goes wrong, sweet old Glenda's going to come back and say, hey, I know stuff happens. I still love you. Like it makes a huge difference building those relationships, being visible, like engaging with the people around you at your church.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're leading people, which most of you are, you have volunteers week in and week out. If they see you setting that example, they're probably going to follow suit.
Yeah.
Well, and that's how you get volunteers over time and steadily, rather than just like, oh, it's fall, I better volunteer recruit, and everyone picked to do XYZ and didn't get down to me. Now I need to find people.
Yeah, or you're reactionary, right? Like I got to fill this PCO spot. I'm running out of people, right? And you're just scrambling.
Yeah.
Instead, you have a backlog of people who want to be a part of something like that. Like, hey, this is a group of people that are actually friends.
Well, it'd probably be easier to fill it if it wasn't a piece of crap spot. What do you mean PCO spot?
Piece crap of PCO. I know.
PCO.
Is this Planning Center?
Yes, Planning Center Online. Yeah.
Well, piece of crap.
So, Eric, we're talking a lot about the soft skills, and if you need to grow up quick in some of the actual technical skills, sounds like you saw somebody playing a guitar on stage, you thought you'd be cool, you did the worship pastor thing for a while, but now you're the audio director at this 4,300 seat auditorium. I assume you had to have a come to Jesus moment as far as like, oh, shoot, I got to figure out how to mix. Like, what was that like growing up quickly in your audio production skills?
Totally. I moved out to Phoenix to be the production director of a church out in Chandler. And that was really the first time where I'm like, all right, I've got to lock into gear. All of my like mixing stuff had only been like relegated to me, like recording stuff at home with music, playing guitar specifically, maybe some like singer-songwriter things. So I'd never been like mixing in a live production environment. So it's so funny. The first thing I did is I talked to my friend Max, who was our front of house guy at a Life Church campus in Springfield. And I'm like, I'm going to have to start mixing audio at a church. I just accepted a job in Phoenix. And he's like, all right, here's what you do. I'm going to give you my login information to Worship Sound Guy, and you're going to watch all their videos. And so I watched all these instructional videos from Worship Sound Guy. It was before I really knew about MXU, which MXU is great too. Both of them are good resources.
And should we tell Johnny and Matt to cover their ears right now? Because you just basically said you got a free subscription to Worship Sound Guy.
Yes. Johnny, I'm really sorry, bro.
Johnny, we love you and what you guys do. Check out worshipsoundguy.com.
To be fair, I did buy a subscription later on to support
We're good
Johnny
now.
and Matt.
Yeah.
Those guys are awesome. So yeah, those videos literally got me started. And my first Sunday at Desert Springs in Chandler, I just started pushing faders, and I was focusing on just the vibe of the room. And like that I wasn't like thinking about like this frequency, that frequency, this. I'm like, are people engaging in worship? And what am I doing? Does this feel good? Right? Like that's all I was thinking about. Like, does this feel good? Does this feel good? Does this feel good? Like, are people responding? I wasn't thinking about like, 330 hertz, there's some mud there. I feel like that should come out of the vocal. Like no one's hearing that, right? Like they're hearing clarity, right? But they're just engaging in the overall atmosphere in the room. Like, are we creating an atmosphere of worship? And that was like all I was focused on. And like, I remember the pastor came up to me after service and like, this is incredible. Like, this is what we've been looking for years. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're really good at what you do. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm just doing it based off of feel. Right. And that's where that musical background came in for me. Like I just knew music. And so I kind of knew how to build a mix just based off of years of being around it, even though I'd never touched a live console.
Yeah. And then was it a much bigger, context moving over to Dream City? Like what were you mixing on at the Desert Springs Church versus where you're at now?
Yeah, Desert Springs, I was really lucky. They had really good gear. They had an Allen Heath desk, a D Live, and then SQs in their minor venues. And luckily for me, they have the same thing over at Dream City.
Okay.
And since then, I've learned all sorts of different consoles, but that was what I learned on, so I was most comfortable with. I just kind of had a relationship with a couple people at Dream City, and my boss, Sean Smith. We have a really big Christmas production in Dream City. It was before I worked there. This was back like right after COVID when no one could get gear. And I had an SQ5 that I was selling from Desert Springs because we just moved over to Logic Pro for our broadcast mix. So I'm like trying to sell this desk to pay for other stuff because like any smaller church, you have very limited budget and you have to figure out how to come up with the money to make other gear purchases. So I was selling this piece of gear, and Sean and I were hanging out like because I knew my buddy Spencer from Dream City. And he introduced me. I got a tour of Dream City. Sean and I were hanging out, and he's like, "You know anyone who's got an SQ? We need one for monitor desk for Christmas in 3 weeks." And I'm like, yeah, I'm literally selling one." He's like, "Wait, are you serious?" Like it was like a joke. And then I sold them the desk, and then like just from the conversations, and I think Sean had kind of like creeped on me a little bit to like see what I was doing at Desert Springs because I was actually the production director over there. I was doing audio, lighting, leading teams, volunteers, you name it. But I was mixing pretty much every week because that was their biggest need at the time. And Sean was just like, all right, this dude knows how to build a slamming mix. And I think he kind of had it in the back of his head that he wanted to hire me for a while. And so it just kind of came about one day, and they ended up pulling me in to do audio at Dream City when I felt God release me. So, and here's a quick sidebar. I would caution anyone. I feel like there's a little bit of a stigma in, especially the church production world, where it's like you're somewhere for about 3 years and then you move to the next big stepping stone. Make sure your motives are good and that it's bathed in prayer, right? Because if you're constantly leaving and going to new places, it's going to be hard for you to build anything, and especially build relationships and culture with people. So,
yeah, that's great.
I like that. Leaving, every year or two, that'd be quite a disaster, quite the stain. Eric, why don't you give us a disaster that's happened to you in your time in production? When everything went wrong, how did you fix it? How'd you address it to leadership after? Or maybe you saved the day right before something went wrong.
And this podcast episode does not count, so you can't use this as your disaster.
Yeah, this one feels like a disaster.
I think the disaster was all the bleeps that have happened. I think this podcast literally has the most bleeps you've ever done.
This is like that slow-mo Deadpool scene where everything's falling apart. So...
Yeah, but thankfully no one listens in December anyways, so.
Yeah, it's great. That's nice. So it's just the three of us here hanging out in our own. Cool. So I would say the worst thing that ever happened to me at Desert Springs, we walk in and we start sound check, and like this is before I really understood, audio is also networking and IT, and I like didn't understand like network switches or anything. And we had just like the jankiest network at the church that I was working at. I walk in and like the console had lost connection to the mix rack because the mix engine obviously lives somewhere else from the surface, and that's how D-Live works. And so I walk in and like the surface is not working, and so I'm like, I have no way to control any faders. So like it's still passing audio, but like I couldn't do anything. And so I got on the phone with we had a contracted IT guy that would come in. He actually worked full time in another church. So it's Sunday morning, like 7 a.m, and I'm calling someone. Like that was my first, right? So like that's my default. So if anyone gains anything from this, if you don't know, research, talk to someone, talk to someone who does know. Don't just spin your wheels, especially when you're on a timetable. Like resource the people you know. So I called someone I knew immediately, like, hey, this is happening. What do I do? And he like walked me through troubleshooting. I had to like pull all net from our switches. Basically what happened is someone had plugged in an access point to our production switch and it was handing out new DHCP leases and was like destroying our net between all of our audio devices. So luckily we figured it out and we had it like just in time to make service. Like I don't even think we got a full rehearsal in. It was scary, but we got through it and I actually learned some stuff. So,
It is amazing how many conversations I've had recently of production guys realizing how much IT is involved in being a production guy now. Like it's a whole new world.
And it's not going to get any simpler.
No, that's fascinating.
I love that he learned something from his disaster. Toby, maybe we should like make some content on disaster learning or like a college course on
100%.
Production disaster learning.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something there.
Yeah.
Okay. Eric, so hopefully you didn't have to have a disaster to give your tech takeaway. Maybe you just learned that in the safe confines of yourself and Google or doing something with your gear. What would be a thing you would give our listeners that would make their Sundays just a little bit easier, a little bit better? And it can be anything, relationships, maybe just a little more than that, but relational, technical, spiritual. I think I just had one of Toby's strokes. They're contagious.
Yeah. I'll give you a takeaway here. I would say let's talk to the audio guys in those seats just because that's where I'm at every week. I would just say as a production guy, like in a church, it's crucial that you know that you're a worship leader. In your seat, you're not just someone that's pushing faders and buttons.
Yeah.
You're literally a worship leader. Like you're setting the atmosphere for the entire room for someone to actually meet God, like in a moment. And that could literally open up someone's entire life. So I had a friend who told me, I can't do production. I don't want to be behind a screen because that's not real ministry. What you need to realize is it is. Like you could literally be opening up someone's heart and getting their guard down to have an experience and an encounter with God that will literally change the course of their life and their eternity. So just realizing that you're a worship leader, it's the same thing. People are looking at you, right? So you're setting the tone as people walk in the room, as all your volunteers walk in the room. Like if you're full of stress, if you're full of anxiety, and if you're creating this like musicians versus front of house mentality, like everyone's going to feel it. And it's going to just create this huge issue. And if you have that feeling like I'm the one in charge, like it's my mix, you're going to create this like rift between the stage and front of house. And honestly, it's going to create this sort of sad, kind of lonely vibe at church where no one is really going to last in the position they're in. If you've got all this animosity built up and this like underlying tension about being the leader and, you created this rift, not only are you failing as a worship leader, you're just failing as a leader. So, I mean, you have to realize that worship leading isn't always done behind a microphone. People are watching you behind the console. So when you walk in on a Sunday morning, just be ready, be prayed up, be ready to lead people, have a word for someone if they need it. Don't be afraid to lift one of your hands off the console and worship, because that's just setting a tone for people. And rather than being so focused on every small minutia of the mix, because let's be honest, you guys have had so many people on this podcast that are incredible engineers that can give you that. The biggest thing that you should be thinking about is the atmosphere and the vibe you're creating and whether or not people are able to engage,
Yeah. I love that. Oh, jinx.
Oh boy.
I'm getting a Coke with lunch, and you're
that's
paying for it.
The sign of the apocalypse, folks. Eric, is there anything you would like to plug here? I'm going to plug my mouth so I don't repeat the same words of Toby anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to check out my Instagram, it's @Mooney. I hate self-promoting, but I've been trying to post more on there. And then I had the opportunity to go to Lee Field Mixing Club out in Sacramento, and I would say you should check that out. Lee's doing a really cool thing. He'll take you into his home studio. You'll hang out, potentially go golf if you're into it. You'll learn some really, really good practical things to improve your mix.
Is that literally what he calls it? Lee Field's Mixing Club?
He calls it the Mixing Club.
Okay, I love that.
That's fun.
It's just
really,
like simple
really
and straightforward. Cool. I like it. Yeah, we love Lee, and excited for this new venture for him. And check it out. Does he have a website yet? Do we know?
I don't think so. I think he's just doing it on social media right now. So I would just hit his DMs on Instagram. And then last thing I'll plug is I work for Church Gear. So if you are out on the
surprise, Blake, he's our new brand director.
Yes,
perfect.
Blake, you're fired.
You're fired.
So I work for Church Gear. So if you are out here in Phoenix or on the West Coast or in Vegas, whatever, hit me up, and I'd love to hang out.
Yeah, Eric is a regional ambassador for Church Gear in the southwest portion of the United States, building relationships with churches and helping them facilitate buying and selling of gear. That was a pretty good pitch right there.
And this is
cactuses need Jesus too.
This has turned into an ad. All right. Well, Eric, thanks for joining us. You better get back to work, I guess. And I need to go looking for a job. So thanks for joining us on this episode, man.
Yeah, it's been an honor, guys. Blake, I'm sorry, dude. Hopefully you find a new job soon.
Not a chance. And now it's time for a Church Tech Confessional, where church production people confess the worst thing they've ever done in church production. Here's one now.
All right, once upon a time, I played drums in a pop-punk band. We did a significant amount of touring around the country. Every now and then, you found yourself on the road with some like-minded individuals. Like-minded in the sense that maybe they had enough vengeful hate in their hearts to respond in kind when certain tour pranks occurred. They had already gotten us pretty good a time or two, so we got a little creative, and they were like a modern metal fused with 80s hair vibe band, and they came out with this big intro with these smoke machines standing right in front of them, just being enveloped in the haze and smoke. And we figured, I wonder what would happen if someone urinated in that tank. And I will tell you, the results did not disappoint. It was vile. The scent immediately started absolutely filling the room. It smelled like burning, like it might as well have been burning human flesh at that point. It was, I mean, I know these machines probably shouldn't be run without proper fluid, and it was a diluted solution, but at the same time, it operated almost perfectly, other than the fact that it smelled so incredibly bad. Of course, they didn't know what was happening. They didn't know they were basking in it, that it was completely consuming their pores with my urine. And well, they knew something was up. The drummer started looking down at himself, kind of trying to figure out maybe if he'd wet himself accidentally. Like it was just like, what is happening? And no one quite knew there, but I'm standing about 3 rows back from the stage just laughing hysterically at these guys. So they know something's up, and their singer decided he was going to like full on Goldberg me and like spear me off the stage, and in retribution. It got a little out of hand, but in the best way. We're all still friends, and the equipment still works, so no harm, no foul. But it was foul, so maybe no harm, a little bit of foul.
Hey, do you have your own Church Tech Confessional that's, 45 seconds to 2 minutes? Send it to blake@churchgear.com, and you might just hear it on the podcast.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
Okay, Blake, so we're pitching black shirts. I mean, you and I are literally wearing black shirts. I'm also wearing my Philo hoodie that they gave me, which is also black. So do we need to...
Trademark this, maybe?
Maybe. Do we just need to enact the community to like...
Yeah, we're the black shirts.
Yeah.
Like the tech team, what are we all wearing?
Yeah.
The black shirts?
Yeah. So do they need to shout it out on social media, the black shirts?
I think you need to post a picture of yourself wearing your black shirt and then say, like, this is the episode where we all became the black shirts. And
Yeah.
we're having a good time.
And depending on when this is coming out, we should see if the blackshirts.com is available before it releases.
That's a good point.